What's up, wild animals? I'm Melanie Vesey, and welcome to another Promotional Rescue talk show. I'm a stand-up comedian, actress, and filmmaker. If you want to see any of my work, my comedy special, my movies, you could do that over at melanievesey.com. But I'm also a promotions consultant with my own company called Promotional Rescue, where I teach people how to promote themselves without feeling gross. And on this talk show, I talk with people from all corners of the industry about how they have promoted themselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly around bringing themselves to an audience about themselves or also to their projects. On the show today, I have the notorious Margaret Cho. It was awesome to chat with her. Margaret Cho is one of the top 50 comedians of all times. She's been working in all kinds of capacities for over 30 years, mostly in stand-up comedy, but also acting and music and on TV. She is so wonderful and so generous to chat with me today on the show. And she had such great, wonderful way of framing how she deals or how she has dealt with her imposter syndrome, which I feel like so many people when they come to work with me are so concerned about how they feel about putting themselves online. And I just know that when you don't feel good about what you're putting online, your foot comes up off the gas and it hits the brake, and it makes promoting very challenging, which is so difficult because so many times people have put sometimes thousands and thousands of hours into whatever it is that they're creating, whether that's an album or a book or a Twitch channel or what have you. And it's like when those bad feelings start to come up, you don't feel worthy or you don't feel good or you feel like people are going to judge you or what have you. Sometimes people fall short and they don't end up taking it to an audience in the best possible way that they can. So Margaret really addressed that. And gosh, she's got such a fantastic way of seeing this, and the way that she separates herself in a very healthy way from what is her work and then also to herself. And I just love this conversation, and I hope you guys will enjoy it too. So the first part of this is available on all of my social media, but if you want the bonus material, that's over on my Patreon, and you can get that information over at patreon.com/Melanie Vesey. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Margaret Cho. Bye. Hey, Margaret, how's it going?
It's good. It's really good. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. And thanks so much for doing the show. I know you're sitting at home with your wonderful cats. I've been watching them, and also to your sweet little Chihuahua every day. Adorable.
They're so cute. But Lucia, the dog, has been humping the cats. Like the cats get they have a ripple rug, which is like two pieces of carpet with holes in it. And so the cat gets in there, and then you just see like a little cattail, and then Lucia just starts humping it. It's really it's kinky because it's like this weird, I don't know the ripple rug is it's a very kinky kind of thing because it's kind of like encasement or something, because it's like it's like a glory hole. That's what it is. It's like a glory hole for cats and dogs. It's really kinky.
Well, I'm sure the people that make that are really excited about the way you've rewritten the advertisement for it.
It's very glory hole. It's super weird because Lucia's never humped anything ever. And so, but she sees a little cat butt in the hole, and then she just starts going at it. I'm like, that is so weird.
Yeah, I have a female dog as well, and she has one toy that just activates that in her. I don't know what it is, and we just kind of let it happen, just too excited, and I understand.
It's very strange, especially when they've been spayed and they don't really, I think it's more like a dominance thing. But
absolutely. Absolutely.
Her little hips which would be 3 inches.
Oh.
Going in and out, and I'm like, that is so funny. It's different from having a male dog when the lipstick comes out.
Oh yeah, I know. It's a whole different thing. Yeah.
It's so different.
So, Margaret, I'm super excited to have you on the show for a myriad of reasons. Clearly you've been doing comedy for, 20 plus years, probably.
Oh yeah, 30,
30, 25?
30, 35 years.
Yes. Oh my God. And, talk to me about the fact that, you do comedy, you also do TV, you've done music, you've done other people's shows. As a part of that, as a performer, you've had to promote all of that stuff. And also, too, you've had to be very forward facing with an audience. So talk to me about your promotional journey. Did that come natural to you, or did you resist it? Did you make friends with it? Like, how did that kind of start for you, and how did it end up?
You have to really make friends with it. I mean, I think it's very hard because you really have to face up to the fact that it's actually a big part of the business of being an artist, is that self-promotional journey. And it's really important to confront that imposter syndrome, because I think that most artists have that. So once you kind of deal with that beast of feeling like I am not really supposed to be here, I'm like an imposter, all artists feel that. It's such a common experience that no artist, no matter how brilliant or how bad, is exempt from imposter syndrome. Everybody has it, from Picasso on down. They've all had it. So you realize that part of the creative journey is imposter syndrome, because I think we just have a natural resistance to being seen. There's something about it that's not natural. And so once you confront that, then it becomes a lot easier. And I realized that promotion is actually a really big part of being a comedian, because that's like promotion is just another extension of doing comedy. You just have to make your jokes really much more in tune with what you're talking about, like what you're trying to promote, and also kind of be up on what's happening in current events, so that you can reference that, so that it feels fresher, and it also feels it's a good exercise. And especially now, since we're not doing comedy live as much. I mean, I've done a bunch of streaming shows and everything, but there's an element of it that is if you can still do promotion and feel like you're active within that, it feels like you're still doing comedy.
It's so, hi, sweetheart. Oh, I love seeing this animal. This is one thing I love about Zoom, which is that I get to see a tiny little window into people's homes, and I get to see everyone's animals. I'm like, don't shoo them away. I want to see the cat butts walk by. I want to see the cuddle time. I want to see all of it. So
it's so cute.
I think that what you're talking about is so kind of like a laser right to the root of why people have issues with this. So and with my company, when people come to me, it's usually because they're having issues. Either they're about to launch something and they don't know where to begin, or they've launched something, or they're promoting something and they're not seeing the results that they would like to see. And the first thing that people are worried about is, feeling vulnerable. People are afraid of being trolled. There's a lot of fear there. They're afraid of the judgment that comes along with this stuff. So you've been in the public eye now for 35 years. I mean, you've had so many ups and downs in your career. I mean, personal and professional, and, getting shows, losing shows, which is just a career. That's just what a career is. There's no right or wrong in any of that. How have you dealt with some of the highs and the lows inside of that? And also having to then bring an audience with you on that journey through that process?
Well, I think when I was younger, I took it really personally. I think it's impossible not to take everything personally when you're in your 20s and 30s, because that's just hormonal. You're just going to take things personally, and you're going to feel like this is a reaction to who I am as a person, but really it's not. Career ebbs and flows are just natural to the longevity of somebody's artistic life. And if you're going to strive for longevity, you're going to have to weather the storm, and that nobody can be on top the entire time, because that's really artificial. And the natural kind of rhythms of people's interest and people's fandom of you, it's going to ebb and flow. And you have to use that to your advantage, because when you sort of feel like what things are going to a lower level of people aren't as interested, then you're setting yourself up for reemergence or reinvention. So that's a
Mm.
really important thing to know, that you do have to kind of go away and then you can reemerge in sort of a public way that is really exciting. So I think that, people get really worried about show business, like, oh, it's only going to last for so long. But that's really only certain things, like certain eras of a career. If we look at somebody like, I think about Donny Osmond, and I think he's like sort of like a child star. And then he was like this teen idol. And then he, it sort of changed. And then sort of he was doing like this thing of like, he's going to be a talk show host. And then he emerges back as kind of like this Las Vegas star, which I think is a great way to sort of like look at a career like, okay, well, it's gone through different phases. And then you go, well, this is an awesome thing to like enjoy. So to know that also it's very taxing on a person to be in the public eye that intensely. And we see like show business itself changes now with social media. It's a very different thing, because there used to be a great divide between this idea of celebrity and real life. And now that divide has really shifted in that everybody's kind of in real life because everybody's accessible through social media. So I think the last sort of big era of the untouchable celebrity was probably Britney Spears.
Yeah.
Early 2000 celebrity, where it was sort of like the era of the train wreck, which is Lindsay, Paris, Britney.
Totally. Yeah.
Predatorial photographers waiting outside of limousines. So, it's like, we have to like deal with the changes in our lives if we're setting ourselves up for longevity. Some people may not want that. Some people may want to make a big splash and then leave, make a bunch of money, and then take the money and run, which is totally great if you couldn't do that. I have definitely more of a workaday approach to it, where it's like, I know that I want to continue working. I mean, also it keeps me young, I think, and it keeps my interest also to do various jobs, whether it's to do comedy or to do music or to be an actor. But in all of those situations, you have to really assess who you are and get over the imposter syndrome. I worked with a very famous, really brilliant singer who hated the sound of his voice. And it was shocking to me, because this is somebody that is like legendary. Like, what the fuck? I mean, some of the most iconic people who I've worked with hate their physical image, the sound of their voice, can't stand it, can't watch themselves. It's super weird. Like, I remember going to a film premiere with Nicole Kidman. She's a star of the movie. And she did a presentation before the film. And then at the end of the presentation, she left because she could not stand watching herself. Could you imagine? And this was in the 90s. The most beautiful era of, or I think she's beautiful always, but in that particular time, just, you couldn't get any better than
oh my God.
Nicole Kidman. But she didn't want to look at herself.
I mean, tell the people, because this is the thing too about when I work with people, and I work with a whole range of people, from like super, established people all the way down to like newbies. And sometimes when I'm trying to like tell the newbies that the way that they're feeling is textbook, it's how these people feel as well. And they kind of can't believe it. And I'm like, no, they hate the sound of they won't watch the dailies. They don't like their voice. They're scared about the thing that they're putting out. And they just, Maria Bamford always says to me, just poop it out. Just put it out there. You know what I mean? Like, just get it done. And then I have, like a newbie that's being a perfectionist about something, hanging on to it, wants to wait, maybe not now. Let's do another, let's edit it again. Let's have sound. And I'm like, like, we got it. Like, I think it's good. We're good right now. You're not going to make it any different. You're just splitting hairs and you're fucking yourself up over the process. How can you just at some point let it out into the world?
Well, you just have to. It's really like you go, well, do you want to be an artist or not? And it's really that simple.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, do you want to be an artist, or do you want to just do something else, or have somebody else do your work?
Yes.
Like if you write something and then have somebody else do it, maybe then you need that once removed thing, which works for a lot of people too. There's lots of different jobs you can have in art.
Right. And not be the face of it, right? To be the person behind the scenes, the person on set, the person doing something else. So when you get to that point when, say, you're working on a music video or you're working on a comedy special, is there a moment, or do you have something inside of you where you go, I've got to walk away at this point? Like, is there something where you can feel it inside of you, or like a deciding factor where you can maybe kind of judge that moment when you're like, I think my work here is done, even though it's not perfect? Or
no, usually I just go, well, if I said all the words right, it's fine. I really let it go really fast, because I don't have I like to hand the editing and things like that over to other people, because I'm just like, I don't want to deal with it, because I will nitpick, and so that's kind of like, nothing's ever going to be good enough for me, so let it be good enough for somebody else that I trust, and that's enough for me. Unless if it's like an acting thing, then I'm like, oh, maybe this take is better than that one, or I can feel it when I'm doing it.
Right.
But for like stand-up comedy, that's really it's hard to be objective when you're doing stand-up comedy for yourself, because you're like, I didn't say that right, or I didn't do that right, or didn't feel right, or whatever, but then it reads right to the audience. So I feel like I'm going to nitpick. The one thing that I will nitpick is stand-up comedy, because I'm like, I don't know. And then I'm just like, I can't get into that kind of spiral of like, that's not right. Or because I will just like say, because I also act different when I'm filming something. Because usually my stand-up comedy is, as you know, we never film it. I mean, unless there's also people that I know that videotape every set.
Yeah.
Which I've never gotten into. I'll sometimes audio tape sets. Yeah. But then but I don't really video everything.
I think what's hard too about comedy, especially when you're working on filming something specific and you've got like the 3 cameras there, and maybe you've got the joke that landed better at a different time. It's just in your head. You're comparing it to another time and you're like, oh, I forgot. I mixed the words up, or I said it, whatever. And then hopefully you're shooting it at least 2 times so you can maybe get the better version of it. But it's hard because, we're dealing with a live medium, and it just sometimes comes out better when you're not with a camera pointed at you, which is so challenging. It's like to get those 2 things, to have the performance be as great as it and as natural as it possibly can be while there's a camera in front of you. It's like the gods have to be all lined up in order for that to fucking work out,
Well, also the audience is watching themselves when the camera's there, because they're super self-conscious as well.
Yeah.
Because when you're shooting like a special, it's really unnatural. The lighting's all different. The people in the audience know they're being filmed.
Yeah.
So they're in a different place too. And that could be either like super excited or super nervous. Like you just never know what's going to happen. So it's sort of not really, there's nothing you can control about it. And it's always very different from performing live.
Oh no, absolutely. Absolutely. So when you've had situations where maybe you have had to hire someone, so you said like, oh, I like somebody else to do the editing and all of that stuff. I've seen, and it's just been like with a lot of my clients recently in the hiring process of hiring people. And I've seen sometimes people get completely burned by the person that they're working with, a bad editor, a bad camera person, whatever. How do you go through the process of getting a team together? Like, is there something that you do to make sure that you're being surrounded by the people that are going to help you put the best product out?
Well, I have worked with the same people, or then if I work with new people, I've always been lucky. I've never had a situation where it's gone poorly in that way. And it's a lot easier now to get it right, because there's so many specials. People know what they're supposed to look like. There's a kind of a codified way that people do comedy specials, and so it's you really sort of understand what's happening. Because before I was doing comedy specials in the 90s, and I've shot them on film too, with short ends. So this is a long time coming. Like, so there's a kind of, you kind of know
Yeah.
sort of what it's about. It's never really been an issue. But yeah, it can be. I mean, it's because you're putting a lot of trust into somebody. But I think that now with the technology we have, with the way that we're shooting things, a good way to sort of safeguard it is to see if the people you're working with can come see you multiple times. So they know where to put the cameras and how to shoot, and what's best. That's kind of like for them to be very familiar with your work, even if you're just sending them tapes of shows before, that can be really helpful.
Yeah, I've always told people that make sure that what they're doing for you, they have evidence that they've done it before. Like sometimes I'm working with new jacks who want to hire, friends for a song, or someone comes to them and is like, hey, I can do this. And I'm like, but do they have any evidence that they've been able to replicate this? Something that they've done before. It's just been something that's been kind of on my mind recently, where like stuff we're like, oh my God, this is not working out. And this is causing, and for me, my goal is to make sure that the stress of this process of delivering this to an audience, because that's always the first hurdle, which is like making the art. And then the second hurdle is getting it to an audience. So if it starts to get really uncomfortable, their foot is going to come up off the gas and hit the brake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it can be.
But there's also different ways to like perceive things. Like also, I mean, stand-up comedy specials, there's such a way to do them. And then there's also like, but I love unconventional ways. Like I love Sandra Bernhardt's Without You, I'm Nothing. Or I love Maria Bamford's thing where she just did it for her parents. That's a great special.
Love.
And it's really different and it's so funny. So it can work in unconventional ways very easily.
And very on brand for her. You know what I mean? Like, and it's also very funny that her last comedy special was called Weakness is the Brand, where it's like, she's even talking about the branding herself, and that weakness is the brand. You know what I mean? Like, which I think is so fucking hilarious, because I feel like sometimes, and in working with Maria, it's been very kind of helpful because she's been very transparent about a lot of her issues, which actually helps. And it frees people up. You know what I mean? So, and I'm sure people have the same thing with you, watching you over the years. How was it for you going from being somebody who didn't have to deal directly with an audience to then Facebook, Instagram, Twitter? Like, was that, I mean, did it happen in a way that you kind of like understood it immediately, or was there kind of like a learning curve with having to like deal immediately with an audience, that like you tweet something and then 10,000 people have a reaction to it? Or
yeah, there was definitely a learning curve, because it's something that I was just not prepared for. And I think that now it's definitely second nature, but it's like certainly something that you have to kind of learn how to do. Because I'm from like old school show business too. So there's a part of me that really is like, it's so weird that there's no longer any sort of divide, because at the era of that I started, it was like fan clubs and fan meetups and in stores and stuff like that. But now it's very immediate, and I really love it. And now, of course, it's been like 15 years. So now it's like, oh, okay. But in the early part of it, I used to get into like real big arguments, like especially on Twitter. There's something about Twitter, you really get fighting. You get fighting with people, but then the problem is that, so it's not really a problem, but I have these other friends who are like hackers, because I'm from San Francisco. So every time before, like when I would get in a Twitter fight, it was like 8 years ago, they would send me all the person that I'm fighting with information, like their business, their address, their home address, their phone numbers, all this stuff. And I'm like, wait, hold up. super weird.
Do not mess with the Cho. Come on. That's incredible.
This is super weird because during the Bush administration, I'd become friends with a lot of like hackers because I was getting trolled so early trolling that I had befriended a lot of people that I've never met in person, but that really helped me out during that era. And so through that, I still sort of like these relationships with them, and but only through like social media. And it's so funny because it's like, if anything's going on, they'll like tell me to dox these people. I'm like, well, I'm not going to dox them, but it's like just funny that I think that's so weird that people are really very vulnerable online, and they don't know. These people that are trolling are really, they're very vulnerable, and it's kind of it's up to the person whether they're going to do it. I'm not going to do anything about it, but it's something that's such a weird thing. And once you can see through the veil of like, oh, this is just some idiot who owns a tobacco store in North Carolina. They have a pipe store. It's like, well, I'm not scared of that. So once you see the humanity behind the trolling, there's something about it that you are able to break it down to their own insecurities and their own human frailty, that I think is really important, because people who are trolling are not happy people.
No.
So, I don't think I've ever gone online and said anything negative to anybody. Even if I don't like their work or if they don't like their art or whatever, I'm not going to, even the people I hate, really, I'm not going to attack, because I don't have that kind of negativity to spare. I use that all for just dumb stuff, but it's not that kind of thing. Is like, to me, it's very, very, it's very sad.
Yeah, I mean, it is very sad. However, it is probably, being trolled is probably like one of the like top 3 fears people have when they come to work with me. They feel like they're going to say that one thing, and everyone's afraid of cancel culture. Everyone's afraid of like whatever it is. And I have specific talking points to that to help people protect themselves, so you don't end up, don't act like that and you won't end up in cancel culture,
Right. Right.
But it's funny because people think that they don't know where the line is. They don't trust themselves sometimes, right? And it's like, then the insecurity comes in. But talk to me about that feeling of like what it was like when maybe the trolling first started. Like, were you concerned about it?
Yeah, I was super paranoid. I was super like scared and getting death threats.
Oh my God,
like
that is
like really
terrible.
Scary. But if you're queer, woman of color, out there being very quote unquote radicalized, progressive politically, you're just naturally inclined to get a lot of trolling. Although now I think cancel culture is something that's interesting because it exists, but there is a line that, it's like, well, don't be offensive. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what it is, but I feel like a lot of times people who have sort of a lot of different kind of minority statuses to their name will be somehow immune to a lot of cancel culture, because a lot of cancellation comes from cis white male, heterosexual guys who are just very not very cautious in the way that they speak. So it just depends.
Yeah, usually what I tell people is like, whatever you're putting on the internet, if you're comfortable with it being on the cover of the New York Times, you're probably going to be okay. Like, if you just kind of like come from that place where it's like, oh, this one tweet could end up in a BuzzFeed article and go to 1.5 million people. Like, if you think about that, and if it's something that you believe in and you can stand on your own 2 feet and say, this is my opinion, this is what I believe in, no matter what it is, then, or it's a personal experience, then I feel like you are going to be pretty much protected in that. Now, there are certain caveats where it's like, I've even had stuff happen to me in my life where people still want to come for me. And I'm like, but that is truly my experience. Like, you're not going to change my mind on that.
This
you know what I
dog is
mean?
coming for these cats. She was like, won't let them on the couch.
Lucia.
Look at that dog, long dog body.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's really, it's definitely like, the thing about cancel culture is that it goes away pretty fast, like the furor of it, but there's always going to be people who like want to keep on harping on something. It just happens, but it's also like, again, we can't really take it personally.
I think that that's so hard, especially when you're so new to like bringing your work to the table. You haven't had that opportunity to separate that, like, I am not my work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you kind of are, but you're not, but you are, but you're not, but you are. You know what I mean? It's really like, which is why I'm always telling people, like, you've got to take care of yourself. So if you get depleted and then that thing happens and you don't have the ability to handle it, it's going to clip you. You know what I mean? And I'm always trying to set people up for a nice, long, comfortable career. Like, I'm not saying it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be challenging. It's not going to be scary. It's not going to have anxiety, but it's like, it's going to have its own version of anxiety and ups and downs. You don't want to add to it. Like, you don't want to have more crazy stuff. And you're also somebody that has really lived publicly with your stuff. I mean, between recovery, relationships, you know, all of that stuff. Like, how have you felt when maybe it wasn't kind of going perfectly, or maybe you were a part of the challenges that were going on in your life and it's also happening on a public platform? I mean, that must have been so challenging to experience it like that.
Yeah, it is. And but that's also when you have to separate it from, like, you can't take it personally. And it's also like, it's something that people say all the time, is that, other people's opinions of me are none of my business is really an important thing to remember. Yeah. Even if you're engaging in a public platform where, in a lot of ways, aspects of your personality are your livelihood. So other people's opinions of you are kind of your business. Yes. But they're not really, too, because it doesn't have to affect you internally. And it's about prioritizing those messages that are nourishing as opposed to depleting. So, you know, like, whenever we look at, like, sort of like our feed, and then we hone in on the negative things that are posts about, like, people reacting to what we're saying, I try to hone in on the positive. Nourishing.
They've done studies that, you know, when something is, you know, challenging to us or confronts us, we immediately want to hop in there with a comment. But when there's something positive, we might even just let it go by. We don't even like it. You know what I mean? It's something about, but what we want to do is we want to help the algorithms show us more positivity, which means we have to understand how our brains work, which is that, fuck yeah, I'm going to be triggered by something. And because I'm triggered, I'm going to want to get in there and retweet it and be like, look at this, or whatever I want to do, whatever my version of it is. But it's like, I need to help my mind first understand that I'm actually controlling what I'm seeing as well. And if I'm putting more positivity there, the positivity has to start from inside of me. But that's not, for me personally, that's not necessarily where I operate from. Because I also operate from a place of total lack, total abandonment, total anger, total fear, which feeds my comedy sometimes. So it's like, I have to understand when to do these things, when to turn on that kind of like self-pity, fucked up, bad shit happens to me, funny time, but not necessarily be putting that on the internet all the time because someone sees it out of context, doesn't necessarily think that about me. And like, whatever it is, do you know what I mean? Like, I can't completely control it. It is very hard, but you have to kind of like understand how your mind is working to kind of help you get that stuff done, you know?
Right. And it's also like not looking outside yourself to build your own opinion of who you are. That's a really important element that I have to like always focus on. And if I'm really going to practice nonviolence, I'm going to start with not being violent towards myself in my thoughts or actions.
Which is like, you know, if you're from trauma, if you were perpetrated on either as a child or even as an adult, and that becomes your inner voice, that's very difficult to start to unhook that, because whatever you've got going on, I truly feel like the internet is just kind of like an amplification system.
Yeah.
Whatever you've got going on this much in your life, you put it on the internet, it can get to be this much in your life, right? And I think what's also very challenging too is that we watch sometimes people be vulnerable online and put these like secrets or honesty or whatever online, and it seems to work for them, right? Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I got sober and here's my comedy special about it. Or like, hey, I fucking relapsed and here's my comedy special about it. Or, oh my God, someone died and I had cancer and here's my comedy special about it. You know what I mean? And you're totally like, well, how do I apply that? Because those are truly the most vulnerable things that someone can go through. You know what I mean? And then put it on the internet or put it for people to watch. It is a very hard leap to make, that it's like, oh, this isn't me, even though these are my total personal experiences.
Yeah. But it's also to like look at it from a point of view of like, nothing's really that personal, because everybody's vulnerable to their emotions, the events in their life, their health, whatever it is, so that all human beings have within them the potential to experience all these things. Yes. So nothing truly is very personal if we really look at life that way, especially if you're like older, like, you know, like, oh, this is so 20s, this is so 30s, this is so 40s, this is so 50s. It's like you go, well, you know, I've seen this. I know what this is about. I know what it feels like. On younger people, it feels really hard to get through. But when you're a couple decades past that, you're like, oh God, it's fine. What
I also find very interesting sometimes, and what I feel like, unfortunately, the past 4 years have pointed out, which is that there is people who specifically haven't had an experience and they can't imagine it. Like, they're not empathetic. You know what I mean? And so it's like, in the same way that we can be empathetic towards ourselves, sometimes people just don't have empathy for us, you know what I mean? Or they don't have empathy for themselves. And then they're bringing that to the internet. I feel like it's like almost like you need Al-Anon for the internet. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to detach with love. That's how you choose to run your fucking show on the internet. Right. But that's not how I'm going to run my show on the internet. But then you're also left with how it ends up. And you know, I know for myself, like, I'm a Virgo. I come from, being raised in the 70s and 80s as a total latchkey kid. Like, I feel so responsible for myself. And then I want to also control the situation. I want to control how you think about it. So there is this like letting go process with and it's funny because when I walk clients through it, sometimes I ask them what their worst fears are. And then I'm like, and then we walk through it and I go, see, it didn't happen. Like, nothing happened. If anything, it was a love-in. They loved it. Yeah. They came to the thing. They bought it. They shared it. More people liked it than not. And that's great. Yeah,
it is great. It is great. But we have like a problem with worrying as a species. You know, like, it's like a human nature to worry about stuff. And I love to worry about stuff. But the worst thing I've ever been through never happened. So it's like really like my own hall of chamber of horrors in my mind, which is why I love I love horror movies and true crime documentaries, because then I can finally relax. Like, it makes me actually like relax to listen to something really like a gory horror podcast. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Because I don't have to imagine the terrible stuff. It's already happening.
That's so funny. I noticed, I call it like the VHS in my head, because I'm not young anymore, but it's like I think about when I start to get into that, like, my brain is like thinking about the same thing over, this terrible thing. And I think about like the Friday the 13th VHS just like dropping into the thing. And it's like, we're going to watch it now. You know what I mean? And I have to fucking be like, you know what I mean? Like, exit that. Like, it's got to go away.
It lifts up. It's like a hydraulic system that lifts the tape out.
And we've got to put something great in there. We've got to put something funny. We've got to put something loving in there, or something that's, inspiring, because for me, watching the scary movie, like my body doesn't know when I'm experiencing the terrible thing and when I'm just super thinking about it. My adrenals are dumping, and then I can't deal with anything. Like I can't deal with any conversation. Like I just am like, we're powering off. Sorry, taking a break. Can't fucking handle it. So, all right. Totally. Well, we're going to go over to my Patreon right now, and we're going to talk some more. So you guys, if you want more information about Margaret Cho, you want to see her perform, her comedy specials, her albums, all of the things, top to bottom, you can get all that information over at margaretcho.com. And if you want to know anything about me, my comedy special, my movies, what have you, at melanievesey.com. And if you want to know more about my services, helping you promote without feeling gross, you can get that over at promotionalrescue.com. So we'll see you over on my Patreon. Bye.